we say Auroville is a dream. And you could actually argue that it's one of the oldest dreams of humanity, because from the time we awakened to thought, human thought I mean, because the difference between thought exists in many species. The capacity of intelligence exists in many species. But what is special about human consciousness is it can step out of itself, observe itself, change what it's doing. We are the most adaptable of creatures because we have a mind that can question and think. But with this questioning and thinking, it has created a profound, and actually it's our strength, not a weakness, a profound dissatisfaction with who we are, where are we going. We have fundamental questions. What is this universe? Why am I here? What is death? Why do people die? These are questions perhaps that other sentient beings on earth do not ask so much. So if you look at the history of humanity, one of the oldest aspirations, which seems to last forever, is the aspiration for light, God. Why do we inhabit this sense of suffering and death? So bliss, can we have undiluted, undisturbed well-being and joy? Life doesn't give that to us. Freedom, we have a very strong sense of freedom. And if you look at the oldest aspiration, if we look at the Vedas, their whole aim was immortality, Amritam. You might have heard of this famous Asatoma Satgamaya, Tamsoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityor Mamritam Gamaya. This is one of our very old ancient chants. And if you think of the three, we are saying, why do we inhabit this non-being of not knowing? And the final verse says, can we arrive at immortality, whatever that means? So this is an old aspiration. We have always sought for an ideal society. We've never succeeded in creating it. So in some ways, when Auroville was launched, this was, even in the mother's case, the mother is the creator of Auroville, very much based on what Sri Aurobindo saw. Mother is the manifestation of Sri Aurobindo's vision. And she had, what is the difference between Sri Aurobindo and all the other teachers that came before that? Teachers from all over the world. The difference is that up to now, any spiritual solution that was sought was finally abandonment of material manifestation in a kind of a heaven, in Golok Dham. The Vaishnavites go to Golok Dham. The Buddhists talk about nirvana. But even in India, where this has been a very strong quest, it's moksha, liberation. This body has to be abandoned. This life on earth is anityam asukam lokam. This is the Gita saying it, and Gita is a scripture of action. Even the Gita says, Virgil says, there are tears in things. And so these tears, these difficulties that we inhabit in the human body, well, the solution is abandon the body and something goes on. Immortality is to be achieved outside of the physical body. Bhasmakam shariram, says one of the Upanishads. So Sri Aurobindo comes along, and this is what is so fabulous about him. He says, but why? Why this evolution if the solution is to step out? There has to be a purpose. There has to be a meaning. And so if you look at his fat magnum opus, I know it's difficult to read, but he calls it the life divine. And what is this life divine supposed to be? A life divine on earth in manifestation. So the aim of Auroville squarely is, can we create a collective aspiration which brings forward into manifestation this dream that is very old of humanity. Now, there have been teachers, leaders, guides from all over the world, and they have achieved something of a kind of a fulfillment in their personal consciousness, and we put them on a pedestal, we worship them. The Buddha, his whole journey was because life is impermanent. He talks about the Four Noble Truths, and the first three are all about, well, if you take a body, it's going to get old, it's going to get diseased, and it will die. So the Buddha sought permanence. And Buddhism, whether the Buddha intended that or not, Buddhism concludes that you have to abandon life, through the Eightfold Path, arrive at a liberation from this cycle of birth. Even the Veda says we are the cattle of the gods. We are dragged. In Savitri, Sri Aurobindo says our souls are dragged as if by a hidden leash, carried from birth to birth, from life to life, and we kind of don't even know what's happening. We are not awake. We say the Buddha, the word Buddha means the awakened one. So we have to wake up to something. Now, this possibility of self-awakening has been there in humanity in every corner of the world. And when people have awakened in this sense, we put them on a pedestal and we have worshipped them. Jesus, the Buddha. We've created religions around them. But what if this could be our aim? And what if that aim could be collective? So the purpose of Auroville is a place of yoga. If you have signed up for Auroville, you have not signed up for an easy, comfortable life. You have signed up for a life of progress and growth of consciousness. So that's the thing that I think all of you need to clarify. Why are you choosing Auroville? We are choosing Auroville because we are one as a species. So one of the aims of Auroville, if you look at the last point of Auroville's charter, it is Auroville will be a site of material and spiritual researches for a living embodiment of an actual human unity. That's definitely Auroville's aim. Human unity. So one of the things we have to learn when we come to Auroville is widen our consciousness and include all the other points of view. Mother says humanity has failed because of exclusivity. So if, for instance, we join Auroville as very proud Indians, oh, India has held the ideas of the spirit and other people have not, no, sorry, that doesn't work in Auroville. There has to be a universal consciousness to start with, which means that human aspiration has expressed itself in every corner of the world. And what the West today brings to us is the capacity for intellectual, physical, vital progress. If today we live in what has been called a Eurocentric world, it is because the West has brought something. We in India, which held some of the highest spiritual ideas of humanity, we had begun to stagnate because we had stopped progressing. So Sri Aurobindo says that India had to be steamrolled awake by foreign occupation. And that occupation started to wake us up because resistance makes you grow, right? I'm saying this, I'm kind of bringing in history and culture and everything because I want you to understand that when you sign up for Auroville, you're not escaping the difficulty. Do not assume that Auroville is an easy and comfortable life. If you come to Auroville, you come to Auroville for a great progress and on all levels of the being. So human unity, definitely, Auroville is an experiment in socio-cultural aspiration for unity. So if we have a consciousness which makes us think we are right and so is wrong, you have to widen that consciousness. You have to be able to be inclusive. Mother says humanity has failed because of exclusivity, and in Auroville I want all extremes to be present. Not bad behavior, not low unconscious behavior, but all points of view have to find a place of unity. As long as we are in our mental consciousness, the highest state of the mental consciousness is the capacity for synthesis. So it's a mental thought that can, at its highest, arrive at synthesis. But Auroville aspires for oneness and union, so necessarily we have to go outside the mind, above the mind. Then we will touch oneness, where there will be no duality. Aurobindo calls all dualities a master knot. So one of the things we have come to do in Auroville is to transcend these master knots. So one of the master knots is this idea of duality. I'm good, so-and-so is bad. Well, that doesn't work. What is it in my consciousness that's not including that other consciousness? And that is, if you look at what Mother has given us, she's given us the Charter, and then a few years, the Charter came to birth on the day Auroville was founded. Then a couple of years later, when Aurovillians began to ask the question, what is the aspiration of Auroville? We have this wonderful 6-line text called To Be a True Aurovillian. It's a full yoga between the Charter and To Be a True Aurovillian. Everything that you have to do in yourself. And it is a collective experiment, it is a collective realization we are seeking, but the field of work is yourself. If you haven't come here to make a huge effort of progress, then you are not kind of in the rhythm of what Auroville wants to be. Now, please, Auroville is not ideal. And I know that when you're joining, you're going to, initially, if you saw it as a beautiful place, the longer you live here, you're going to see all the problems. Human beings living together, not obvious, not easy to make them come together. But rather than looking at the problem outside, Mother says all difficulties are opportunities. You have to turn the difficulty to yourself and say, okay, what's my limitation? How can I transcend that difficulty? So I spoke to you about the 4th point of Auroville's Charter. I'm going backwards because the deepest point is the first point. The 3rd point is Auroville will be a site of material and spiritual researches for a living embodiment of an actual human unity. Now, this charter has emerged from what we call in India a consciousness that is a drashta, a seer. It is not an intellectual document at all. It has not come from a thinking consciousness. It's come from something beyond. There is a wonderful conversation in the agenda, if you want to read, where Mother has received 2 formulations of the Charter of Auroville from 2 of the disciples who are there at that time. And then you see what they've written. It's full of lots of platitudes and big words. And then Mother comes up with this charter, where every word she says means something. It's in its place. It's a mantra. And in the end, if we want to understand what Auroville is, this is what we have to look at. So Auroville will be the bridge between the past and the future. If we ask ourselves, what is the future of humanity? What is the future of Earth? Very few people will come up with an optimistic worldview. We're living in a pretty messed up world. So how is Auroville going to be a bridge? We do need to understand the past, and what kind of past and what kind of understanding. When I was going through school, it was just a series of wars and kings and a succession of events that did not give me a psychological understanding of what this whole process of human evolution is. Aurobindo has written 3 books on that. So I recommend that one of the things that we have to do in Auroville is not just come and join. I think it's a time for study. I'm still studying. I never stop studying. Mother says the day you think you know everything, then you've gone old. Youth is an attitude of consciousness. It's an attitude of constantly learning something new. So if you've signed up for Auroville, please keep developing your mental consciousness, your life consciousness, and your bodies. If you have one kind of a body today, well, you can evolve it. You don't have to settle for what you've been given. Everything is possible. So what is the past we are looking at? And there are luminous periods of human past in every corner of the world. We should include that in our consciousness. One of the things we have to develop is a universal consciousness. We have to understand all parts of the world. We haven't to be limited to our local ancestry, birth, background. The first sentence of To Be a True Aurovillian is, the first necessity is the inner discovery to find out who one truly is. And then Mother tells you all the things you're not. You're not your birth. You're not your ancestry. You're not your hereditary. You're not the religion you were born into. You're not the national background you came from. So if you take away all this, what's left? That's who you are. So the journey has to be made of disentangling. Mother Sri Aurobindo talks about the integuments of the soul. We are surrounded by ideas, thoughts, inheritances, even our DNA is an inheritance. We have to disentangle ourselves from that. So past, our personal past, our national past, our international, earthly past, all that we have to take into account, but with the attitude to leap into the future. Auroville will boldly spring towards future realizations. And she uses the word realization. What is a realization? A realization is something you embody in your consciousness. It's got nothing to do with thought. It's to do with embodiment, when you are. In India we say aham brahmasmi, meaning I am that. Now I can say it as a sentence. Do I embody it? Do I experience it? Do I live it? If I do, then I have a wider consciousness. That's the journey to be made. So a bridge between the past and the future. And then Mother says, taking advantage of all discoveries. So there are discoveries that humanity has made. We have made a huge amount of, I would argue, mental progress. We haven't progressed much in our life energy. We are as bad as 3,000 years ago in terms of our lower energies. That's why wars still exist on Earth, because the life spirit of humanity still remains selfish, self-centered, self-aggrandizing. It's always the other person to blame. I am never to blame. I'm okay. I wouldn't have done this if he or she hadn't done that. Absolutely not the right attitude for yoga. In yoga, you take responsibility. So when you've signed up for Auroville, you've signed up for a yoga of humanity, and you start with yourself. So the bridge between the past and the future, taking advantage of all discoveries from without, which means Auroville is a place of science. It's a place where everything that humanity has done in the best way that it's done it could find a place in Auroville. Many of the things, I've been in Auroville more than 50 years, and when I came, it was a barren, desertified plateau. I am completely inspired by the work that the pioneering Aurovillians did, and we have to ask ourselves, would we have been able to do that? If we have a forested plateau, it is this absolute 100% dedication of hundreds of people who are now maybe in their 80s and their 90s, who've given us this golden, beautiful plateau, which everybody now wants to come to. When I came, you had to be a bit crazy to join Auroville. So it was easy to join Auroville at that time. Now you all are being made to go through a process, because sometimes it's a bit questionable why people are joining Auroville. Are they joining Auroville for an easy, comfortable life? That's why there are all these structures and processes. Take them like that. They are to test your commitment to that deeper truth, right? So boldly swinging towards future realizations, realization, embodiment, and that's Auroville's aim. Can we as a collectivity, and a collectivity that welcomes people from every corner of the world as citizens of this beautiful blue planet. Equally, there is no hierarchy. There should not be a hierarchy. If there is, it's hopefully a temporary aberration, because there is an inner soul equality that Auroville wishes to express. And keep that as a truth. Even if you come across a hierarchical situation, keep that as a truth in your consciousness. Now, that's not the ideal Auroville that we want to create. Second point, I'll just quickly cover the charter and then you can ask me some questions, right? I don't want to just be a person lecturing you, but still I'm going through some of the points which I think you all need to come in contact with. Second point of Auroville's charter: Auroville will be a place of unending education, constant progress, and a youth that never ages. All right, so how do we create a youthfulness that never ages? I don't know if you've noticed in Auroville that there'll be 90-year-olds cycling around Auroville. There's no retirement in Auroville. Please don't join Auroville if you want to retire here. There is no retirement. You keep working. I know 90-year-olds who, if their bodies permit, are working. You're taking care of the health services, and as long as the body is capable, it offers itself, because the yoga is a yoga of self-offering. So Mother says, I know old people of 9 and young people of 90. Remember, Mother launched Auroville when she was 90 years old. So this wonderful dream of humanity, she was 90 when she launched it. So we all are younger and we have better bodies. We have a lot to do in the world. So a youth that never ages is an attitude of consciousness which is created by the sense of an unending learning and a constant progress. I would say 2 conditions keep this constant progress alive in our consciousness. The sense of always learning, always progressing. In the 60s, UNESCO came up with a document, because they were talking, UNESCO is concerned with education in the world, and they were talking about what kind of a society is an ideal society. And they came up with the title, A Learning Society. Auroville is clearly a learning society. You are constantly learning something, so you should wake up in the morning and say, okay, what do I have to learn today? And then you make the progress that you have to make. So one of the greatest gifts that life can give you is to have a sense of constant progress. 2 attitudes help you to have that sense of progress. A sense of wonder, because this universe is pretty magical. How did something that started with what science calls the Big Bang, they don't know what was there before, they say it's a singularity, and suddenly out of nothing you have this Big Bang, and then you have all these gases which settle into planets. Somehow the planet we inhabit is beautiful, small and blue. Since the 60s, when we began to have pictures from space of Earth rise, it's magical, the Earth we inhabit, and there are no countries from space. So countries, nations, attitudes of limitation are narrownesses that Auroville has to abandon. We are universal. It's a universal township. So if you find yourself expressing, oh, I'm Tamil, I mean, in India, we can say, I'm Tamil, I'm Punjabi, I'm Bengali. That's a limitation. You're first an Indian. I mean, you remain Tamil and Bengali and Punjabi and Gujarati or whatever, but you're first the family person you are, then you widen to your state, then you widen to your nation, but then you are finally a citizen of the earth. So don't find yourself saying things that are limited. Try to constantly find a way to express yourself collectively in as vast and as open a manner as possible. So a sense of wonder awakens that openness and universality and vastness, and the sense of wonder and a sense of gratitude. Because gratitude is something that goes out. It doesn't come in. You cannot be closed in and small if you are grateful. So I recommend that every time you're in a bad mood, try to do a practice of gratitude, and it'll put you in the right dimension. I'm saying this because you're going to run into difficulties. Do not assume that just because you've joined Auroville, the difficulties are finished. No. Difficulties are the condition of life. So, unending education, constant progress, and a youth that never ages. When Auroville started, many of the young people who joined had little children. And they asked Mother that why can't we put our kids into the ashram school? And she said, no, Auroville must have its own school system. So in her lifetime, school buildings began to be built, and some sort of a school started. There were people of all, from babyhood to late teens, they were all there. And school started. At one point in time, schools closed. So that's another story. We can talk about it another time, the idiotic history of Auroville's evolution, because it's quite bizarre in some ways. And it's worth exploring what happened to Auroville from the time it started. Because from the beginning there was this duality. We flashed around the world, this beautiful master plan, and then people in the early years would turn up and say, where's the city? And there was only a desert. There were no trees, there was no water. So from the beginning, there was a duality between the dream and the actuality. So from the actuality, we are slowly building up towards the dream, and never in a very easy and comfortable manner. It's through friction and rubbing and, in the early years, people would say, oh, but you've left the real world. Say, wake up. Auroville is completely real, and it's not easy to be in Auroville because there's supposed to be no hierarchy, right? So at the beginning, when Mother spoke about the school, she made a list. The first name she put on that list was last school. It is as if Auroville starts with a school that is the last. Then she had after school 1, 2, 3. You can see this a photograph of her handwritten. We circulate it a lot in last school because we are the only school that keeps Mother's name. So last school, after school 1, 2, 3, super school, and finally no school. You all are signing up for no school, but Auroville is a school. It's a school of life. It's a school of self-finding. It's a school of self-discovery. It's a school of growth and progress. Unending growth, unending progress. So that we can create this new society that Auroville wants to be. So that's point 2 of the charter. And then we come to the most mysterious point. That's the first point of the charter. Auroville belongs to nobody in particular. Auroville belongs to humanity as a whole. It's just notional, that idea, because there is no place on earth that doesn't belong. Nationalism dominates the world. So we are very much part of the Indian nation. She says, ideally, I should put Auroville in a desert. In an island somewhere else where there would be no outside control. So we start with something that's not quite ideal. And yet, I want to say that Auroville could only be in India. India has passed 2 parliamentary acts celebrating and recognizing the importance of Auroville, because Auroville fits into the highest spiritual aspiration that India has expressed. I'm not talking about the modern nation, but I'm talking about the inspired ideas that have created Indian civilizational ethos and thought. So even our parliamentarians have recognized that this is the spirit of Auroville, but they've recognized the spirit of Auroville. Our task is to make that spirit visible for people to see. We haven't succeeded in doing that so well, right? So if we are a universal township, we have to embody that universality so that when people come to Auroville, they can feel it, they can experience it, they can know it. So It's just a notional idea, but it's an idea that we have to recognize that the lands of Auroville do not belong to us. We are trustees, we are holding them for humanity as a whole, for that new species that Auroville aims to bring forward. So Auroville belongs to nobody in particular. Auroville belongs to humanity as a whole. But to live in Auroville, one must be the willing servitor of the divine consciousness. So every word there we need to analyze. What is the divine? You know, when Auroville, I guess you all know about the foundation ceremony, no? All the member states of UNESCO brought a handful of soil and it was placed in the amphitheater surrounds this lotus urn, and earth was placed in it. If you see photographs of the foundation of Auroville, 5,000 people are there, young people, if not from all corners of the world, ashram kids, a handful of soil from all the member states of UNESCO. At that time there were about 125. Today we are beyond 200. So it's as if the world is splitting into more and more nationhood. When we're wanting to arrive at universality, we seem to give birth to more and more nations because people just don't get along well together. But anyway, when Auroville was founded, 125 member states of UNESCO, plus all the states of India, a boy and a girl placed a handful of soil in that lotus urn to symbolize human unity, right? That was the foundation ceremony. The next day, if you came to that land, barren, empty, nobody, nothing. The first pioneers, it took them 6 months to come into Auroville. Fourcomers, the word fourcomers is the first settlement of Auroville. That's why it's called fourcomers. And the couple that settled there, I don't think either of them is alive today, but so they kind of created a little capsule there and they settled, but the water had to come from Pondicherry in those kattavandis. You know, now we don't have those big wheels anymore, but in those days there were those kattavandis which were destroying the land, whatever there was. So they would get water from Pondi. Just for you to understand how difficult it has been, the material manifestation, you would have to dig out the red laterite, remove 3 feet of soil, 3 feet of this red earth, red oxided earth, get topsoil and compost, put it inside, plant a tree, and then cover it till it could not be eaten by the tallest cow. Because the village economy, it was subsistence agriculture, and the village economy had shifted more and more to cows and goats, who were eating the rest of the ground cover. So the first work was planting trees, conserving the land, making barns. So you come for a dream of human unity and you are confronted with this desert, that where are we going to make the city if it's a desert? The first 20, 30 years were very much focused on the land. Today, the agroforestry that Auroville has practiced has given us a pretty green environment. It's one of the few places on earth which has had a physical replacement visible to see. One of our early friends who became a Prime Minister of India, Dr. Narasimha Rao, he was in our first International Advisory Council and very much along with J.R.D. Tata, when people who were supporting Auroville. And I remember he came when he gave a speech to those of us who were there at that time. He says, I've been visiting Auroville and visiting my constituency. My constituency has started as a forest and it's slowly become a desert. And I come to Auroville, it started as a desert and it's slowly become a forest. So it was very stark. That remark has stayed in my consciousness. So I think one of the things we do need to acknowledge is the work of the pioneering first settlers that Auroville settled into. Today, what we are confronting is much more issues of education, economy, and governance. These are psychological issues which are harder to solve than we can kind of agree. Auroville from the beginning has been practicing organic agriculture, agroforestry rather, and it's been organic. At a time when the world was spraying DDT everywhere, Mother said, no, you're not going to make that error. So in some ways, Auroville has been like an advanced colony of many of the ideas that now are generalized all over the world. We shouldn't get left behind. We should continue to be pioneering. And the pioneering work that we have to do today is in education, economy, and governance. We have to demonstrate to the world that it's possible for people from all over the world to come and live and work and create a society together. So, willing servitors of the divine consciousness. The moment someone provokes you, the moment someone does something that offends you, your willingness disappears. So willing is a condition of yoga. To remain willing at every stage of your daily life is the most difficult of all things. So Mother uses these words, and she's basically suggesting a condition of constant inner yogic poise. It's very hard to create in outer daily life when everything is coming at you. Precisely the thing that you don't want, precisely the thing that provokes you is what is going to test you. Can you remain willing and of service? Auroville is a place of service. We live in a world where service is not valued anymore. If you look at our spiritual symbol at the center, the Matri Mandir, it has physically, I'm not going to describe it, but it has 4 entrances: Maheshwari, Mahakali, Mahalakshmi, and Mahasaraswati. The mother of wisdom, the mother of power, the mother of sweetness, harmony, beauty, and the mother of skill in works and perfection. Mahasaraswati, if you look at the entrances that take you to these 4 entrance pathways, the longest pathway is the Mahasaraswati pathway. It's not by chance, because to be of service is the hardest thing on earth, and she is the mother. You should study. There's no time to cover those 4 mothers, but they embody the power of self-expression. We have to become those 4. I don't mean we all have to become mother, but we have to embody what the power of these 4 energies, forces, creative principles create on earth. So you have to awaken in your consciousness wisdom, strength, harmony, perfection. You should be sounding these parts of your being consciously and separately. If you neglect one side, your work is not complete and integral. This is a yoga which calls itself an integral yoga. This is a yoga which is a yoga of transformation, of manifestation, of self-expression. And the fundamental condition of this yoga is servitude to the highest source of the universe. So in some ways, we are all, and there's a line in Savitri, laborers in the quarries of the gods. Everyone in Auroville, regardless of where they are and what they're doing, is a servant of that. We live in a world where servanthood is not valued anymore. And yet that's the key to the manifestation of the future. To be of service, to be available. There is a French word, disponible. Any French people here? To be disponible. There's no translation of disponible. And in German, Gelassenheit. The capacity to relax and be available. So these ideas are present in many language sources. And that's one thing that Auroville should celebrate. We grew up in such a rich cultural soup, and we have to learn from each other. The idea that somehow my culture and my background makes me somehow more special is really not the spirit of Auroville. So we need to learn from each other. We are in a learning society, and each one comes and gives something to the whole, and we can learn from that. I want to say, 50 years in Auroville, boy have I learned from the early pioneers. The capacity to serve on the ground in the most difficult conditions. I value that and I respect it. And because I value and respect it, I receive the respect in return for what I am able to contribute, because I couldn't have done that. So recognize your limitation and be of service. So that's the charter. I don't think I have time to go to be a true Aurovillian. Ideally, I should have done all these 3 texts, but I hope it has made you interested to explore each of these texts with each word. Try to find definitions for every single word, because every word is meaningful here. This charter was written originally in French, and it was read out in many languages. And a little anecdote, at that time it was the Soviet Union, and in the Soviet Union they'd thrown out all ideas of divine and godhood and everything. So the Russian consul says, I cannot accept this word. So in the Russian translation, it was something like perfection. So there was a kind of a dialogue with the Russians that, would you accept supreme perfection, like complete perfection? And they said, yes, we are a society that's aiming at perfection. So I think one of the things we have to analyze are the words. Do we agree upon the words and the definitions we find? Because you will find that everyone understands every word in their own way. And one of the things that divides us is language. So one of the things Mother said about Auroville, she says, an amusing definition comes to me. Auroville is a Tower of Babel in reverse. You know what the Tower of Babel is? In the Bible, there is a story that people come together and they're starting to build a tower, and the biblical God is a little bit of an angry, and he doesn't accept that human beings can catch up with him in some ways. So he sends them a babel of voices that everyone begins to speak in a language that everyone else doesn't understand. So the Tower of Babylon, the Tower of Babel, is the story of how human beings got divided from each other. And Mother says, Auroville wants to be a Tower of Babel in reverse, which means we have to learn to speak the same language. And I can assure you the only language that we can agree on together is the language of the soul. So if your words come out from the depths of truth, and not your truth, but an indefinable, transcendent truth, then perhaps there is more chance of other people understanding what you are saying. There is something called speaking in tongues, where whichever language you speak in, everyone understands you because you're speaking from a transcendent language. So in some ways, Sri Aurobindo and Mother are beings that have spoken a language that unites, harmonizes, bring all the ideas together. Sri Aurobindo and Mother are universal in spirit. They're not very nationalistic. So one of the first things we have to let go of is this narrow nationalism. The right to be patriotic. My first love remains service to India, along with service to Sri Aurobindo and Mother, along with service to humanity. You don't have to let go of one thing, but it has to be universal, and it cannot be in competition with someone else, right? Sai Suresh?
Yes, thank you.
I give you 5 minutes for questions. I have another meeting I have to attend, so I'm winding up fast. Sai Suresh had wanted me to be here 1.5 hours, but I can't be. I have something else I have to do. Yes?
Any questions? Anyone?
Tell me, did this work?
Yes. Yeah.
I went all over the place, but I prefer to give you a kind of a impressionistic experience of what Auroville wants to be. Everyone, was it okay?
Any questions?
Yes, comments also if you like.
I read the question will be well phrased, but you talked about no hierarchical system. I was just thinking for any task to be done, I've been brought up in a world where there's a responsibility and accountability. How would you see those two working?
Oh, it works perfectly, because it's not authority, it's responsibility. If you have a responsibility, show up. Be there. Never not show up. You don't have to be in charge to be responsible. Think of a home. Who holds the, often it's women. They have no recognition and no status, but they hold the place together. So there is a way of being responsible which doesn't give you control and authority. So anyone who's occupying a position and kind of giving everyone orders is not in the spirit of Auroville. You have to be part of a team. And I think it's absolutely magical. And I've lived this experience in all the years that if everyone takes the right place, it's a team that works beautifully. And I want you to notice all the teams in Auroville that are working beautifully. Health services. It would be hard to say there could be an executive that's in charge, but that executive is not the boss. The farewell services. So many places like that are magical because it's a team. The place I work in is a team. And when the team is truly a team, where it's inclusive and there is no boss giving you orders, it's magical. I would not choose another way of being ever. It's so uninteresting to be the boss.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like to. First of all, thank you very much. It was really inspiring. It's the first time that I hear all of it so bright and beautiful, where I feel it inside. And if you can elaborate, when you start talking, you talk about eternity. If you can just elaborate a little bit more of that, what do you mean? Do you mean, was the vision of the mother was that people will keep on surviving in the physical body?
Okay. So in some ways, the earth doesn't get destroyed. It could be argued that we as a species and the way we are acting on earth, we are turning our beautiful earthly home into a moon. We may wipe ourselves out of the manifestation. We may. I don't think we will. I'm very optimistic. But I'm saying as an argument, we have to change our behavior as a species. So what is internal is that in you which doesn't die. So we have many parts of our being. We have an instrumental nature which is made of mind, life and body. But we have also something that survives the death of the body. Something that goes on. That's something, that eternal, immortal self. The Gita says the self is the friend of the self and the self is the enemy of the self. Self? Which self? So the outward looking, egoistic, materialistic, self-centered, limited being is the enemy. The free being, vast, inhabiting individual self-truth, universal self-truth and transcendent self-truth is the idea that inspires Auroville. There is a oneness, and that oneness we have to touch. It has never been done before that in a collective human setting we create a critical mass of individuals. I don't know if you've heard of this 100th monkey thought experiment that Lyle Watson spoke about in the early, more than 20, 30 years ago. It's a thought experiment. And he says that there are monkeys on an island and then they learn a certain behavior. One mother monkey does something and then she teaches her kids and then everyone on the island learns to do that. I think it's a question of washing what they're eating before they eat it. And then suddenly the capacity is generalized in humanity, in all monkeys all over the world. So that's kind of the aim of Auroville, that we create a pattern of behavior that is so sufficiently universal that it creates a critical mass that becomes possible as a learned behavior in every corner of the world. And then we touch something of that eternity. So it's a dimension within you. And the only way to find it outside is to find it first within you. I don't think that answers your question, but it sets you on the road. Anyone else?
Thank you so much. I think that was one of the most wonderful talks I've heard in a very long time. You said two sentences which stuck with me. Difficulties are
Opportunities.
opportunities. They are the basic conditions of life, and also one has to maintain a sense of wonder to go through these. I think practically it's very difficult to do that. I think most of us have come here for the yoga, and despite our optimism, there are moments where a sense of wonder is very difficult
I agree.
because of local issues and also the world in general.
I agree.
How would you suggest we try to revive a sense of wonder when life does not allow you to do that?
Well, it isn't presently allowing you, but the potential is always there. So you have to just keep, it's like building a muscle. You have to practice, practice, practice. So in the Gita, Arjuna says to Sri Krishna, it's all very well, you've given me all these ideas of yoga, but what am I to do with this head? Chanchal man, it just keeps running. I cannot control it. And so Sri Krishna says two things, Abhyas and Vairagya. Abhyas is practice, practice, practice. Detachment, detachment, detachment. So if there is an issue and a problem that comes to you, step away from it. In yoga psychology, we talk of something called the witness consciousness, the Sakshi Bhava. If you try this thought experiment right now, I'm running out of time. If you try this thought experiment, look at yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror. Yeah? Which means you're looking at a mirror and you're looking at yourself in the mirror. Do that, everybody? Everyone can do that, no? You're looking at the mirror, but you are looking at yourself in the mirror. Now, take it a step further. Look at yourself, looking at yourself in the mirror. We have a mind that's capable of doing that. That's the witness consciousness. You witness and you witness and you witness. So you have to awaken that consciousness. That you're going through, one part of you is going through hell, but the other part is saying, I'm going through hell. And the fact that you recognize that creates a detachment. So, no shortcut. Yoga is a process. You do not arrive at a result tomorrow. It's a journey.
Again, can we have applause for Deepti ji, please? Thank you.